hey, if the other side is coordinating to ban books, which we found out that's exactly what's happening, right? It's not a grassroots effort by these individuals. It's highly coordinated, well funded.
Oh.
And if they're going to coordinate, then we need to be coordinating, right? Because we're all putting out, the exact same fires that are being fueled by the same beast. So we help people around Texas and share what we've got and work together.
Wonderful. Great work.
My name is Alina Luson Kitlitz. I am a student at Texas A&M University School of Law. My supervisor, Sarah Zambrine, at the Texas Civil Rights Clinic. And I'm a clinical student, and I got involved with book bans because I got assigned the matter for working with banned books in specifically women's prisons. And so being more informed of that is a more recent thing for me, but it's definitely an issue that I'm very passionate about. And so, yeah.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Denise. I'm with Lions Justice and Effective Women Alliance. We're all informally incarcerated females. The book bans that constantly goes on every day. It was a lot of books that we, being incarcerated, were able to have at one point, and then they just start snatching them. We start getting book ban notices in the mail saying we couldn't have this, and it's basically around mental health, because you really need those type of books in there. It's not only mental health, it's the things that LGBTQ community can have. Some of these people are dealing with their mental state, and to ask for help, they wouldn't get it. So, as Alliance, we all are fighting for what's right, whether it's the heat, the book ban, just the women inside, period. They need to be addressed. As far as I go, I was 15 when I caught this case. I did 33 and a half years in prison. I've only been out almost 2 years.
At 15?
Yes, ma'am. I just got out. Next month on the 3rd will be 2 years. And giving back to the community is what I strive for and what I'm doing.
Wow.
To keep other kids out, because it is hard in there. I'm not going to tell you it's a cakewalk. It's not. And at the age of 15, you have to grow up in there. You either going to grow up or you're going to get ran over. So a lot of those books that's being banned could have helped me along the way. But thank God I had my family. So we're trying to give back right now.
Thank you for sharing.
Hey everybody, I come at this, my name's Richard, I come at this from two perspectives. Perspective number one is as an organizer in the community. I've been an organizer with various organizations, currently with 5 toxic prisons right now. And one of the things that we do, we work specifically like prisoner and human rights violations, specifically at the intersection of environmental justice. And this has to do with book bans, because we focus deeply on understanding that all people in prisons are political prisoners. And we specifically work on making sure they have the resources that they need, including books and other material resources for survival, as we work on that particular issue of ending incarceration. And then my other hat that I wear on this, I'm deeply committed as an educator. I work in the public school system as a teacher, and I work with the Ethnic Studies Network of Texas. And book bans have been a major issue, specifically within the social studies curriculum, specifically within any of those things. For my school and a lot of the school districts that I've worked with, a lot of it has been like critical race theory, critical studies, things like that. And I personally think those are the most important stuff that students need to learn, need to read about, and happy to share creative strategies that I have to think about what those, like how to actually do those things from a teacher's perspective. So that's me.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm Sarah Zambrine. I direct the Civil Rights Clinic at Texas A&M Law School. I work with Selena, who worked with Lioness on representing Lioness in looking into book bans in the prison system, trying to get more. Lioness obviously has the lived experiences of how those bans impacted them, what that looked like inside. And so our role in this has been kind of documenting it, looking into the research, putting together a report that we will release in November at the dock on November 19th. So we'll have another event here we can all gather to talk about that more specifically. But it's been, I've known about this issue. Obviously, we hear a lot. We talk a lot about book bans. We talk about how it's impacting kids in schools. But seeing the sheer volume and the ways and the types of books that are banned in the prison system has been surprising to me. And yeah, we can talk more about that.
Hi, I'm Kira Thornton. I am a local author, and I am here. I'm here to volunteer from Authors Against Book Bans. I am also a member of the LGBTQ community, which there are a lot of book bans. A lot of the books that are being banned, that's what they are targeting. I also have a master's degree in library science, and libraries were a safe space for me as a teenager, so I take it very seriously when those safe spaces are violated, and that's how I got involved.
This is beautiful. We have a wide range
Yeah,
here.
that's like the perfect.
We're covering book bans from the schools all the way to the prison systems. This is going to be an awesome conversation.
Yes.
So looking forward to it. So I'm gonna turn it over to you, Sarah.
Okay. Let's dig in a little more on something we touched on. How, so maybe talking, I hear kind of 3, maybe 4 contexts represented in the prison system, in schools, in libraries, also an author perspective and a bookseller perspective. And there are different ways that the bans impact everyone. So maybe kind of starting with the prison arena, Denise, if you don't mind, say more about how these bans impact you, what type of books are banned. You mentioned mental health, you mentioned LGBTQ books. How does that affect people? How did it affect you? How did it affect others? And what's the kind of scope of this? What did books mean to you inside?
Inside books meant to me, mentally, thought process. You can write your thoughts down on paper, but to read someone else's feelings and see how from the outside look in and give you a sense of peace, because you don't know what that person's going through not unless you're reading it. You can visualize it, you can assume, but if you're reading these people's words and understanding how they're feeling, then maybe you can understand your feelings. You know, I can't say what you done been through now unless I done walked in your shoes. And I tell people that every day. You can't tell me what I went through for 33 and a half years. If you have not walked in my shoes, not even a fourth of it, you can't tell me that. You can empathize with me, but to know what I went through, that's a hard thing. You know, just to be honest with you, everything is based around race inside of prison. And if you don't have that mind frame to keep that space, that you don't want to deal with that, you'll go crazy because you don't have anybody to talk to. If you go to the infirmary and drop a form and go, you need to see mental health, you always have one in there that's doing mental health that's saying, oh, well, I went through that when I was young. I'm not in here for you. I'm in here for me. That's what I come here for. I come here for you to enlighten me on why I feel this way. Not for me to hear your feelings and the conversation is done. You know, so you really don't have anybody to turn to if you don't have a friend in there that you can turn to. But even that gets you in trouble. Say, for instance, I know for a fact, I lost my mom while I was in there. That killed me inside. I had all kinds of things going on in my head. And I had nobody to talk to but my friends. You know, when I walked in, it was just a sense of feeling. When I walked in, I was like, what am I doing in the lieutenant's office? I ain't got no case. And it went from there. I stopped listening. It was like my whole world just turned black. But my friends was there for me. But in the process of them being there for me, they got a case. Because you can't give hugs. You're not supposed to touch. Everything is a sex case. You know, so when it comes to banning books, whether it's racial, whether they feel like in their perspective, oh, this is about rape, or it's somebody's life inside this book. And yes, they may have helped them, they may have hurt and harmed them, but it helps other people because somebody else is going through the same thing. And it made me have some type, because I like to read self-help books, read period. And that's how my sister used to see me all the time. So a lot of those got banned because of the scenario of the book. But that's anybody, that's anywhere. The scenario is gonna come if you're writing a story. A book cannot be a book if you don't get the baseline. So with me saying that, it affected my whole being. I lost 7 people while I was locked up. And they all was close to me. And I almost lost my brother. So yeah, it hit home for me. I needed to release because I was angry when I got locked up. I'm not gonna tell you I was a kid. I was so angry. I used to fight all the time. I used to jump on the officers because I was so angry. But there was a time when I had to sit back. I had got housed and I was in a cell, and I just prayed out to God. I need some help. I'm asking you to relieve me of anything that I'm feeling because I need to go home. And he did that. He did that for me. Because if you see my track record from the time I went in, I was very rebellious. I felt like the whole world crashed around me. I didn't have a book to read. I even turned to Allah, which is the Quran, which is Islam. It's a way of life. It's not a religion. I don't battle with religion. To you be your way, to me be mine. But even some of our religion books have gotten banned. So where do you turn to? It makes you feel empty inside.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Selena, you've done some of the research. What are the categories? Denny's mentioned some of the things that are banned, like books that talk about rape, racial themes. Do you see that when you look at the documents about what books are being banned in Texas, and why are those books banned?
I do see that, like if it's even a mention of it, like if it's like a character's opening up to their friend about an experience they had, like that's automatically banned, and it's not
Like
just
Roots,
that,
right?
Yeah.
Roots is banned.
Yeah,
It's banned.
Bruce is banned.
yes,
Yes.
it's banned.
Oh, yes.
And so it's and it's not even like a if it's one line on one page, the entire book is banned, which is heartbreaking because you're like, well, the rest of the book is fantastic, and it's like they can't read them, and then I'm trying to remember the other half of your question. I apologize.
Just what you see when you look at the list of 10,000 books that
yeah,
are banned in Texas.
thousands and thousands of books. Some of them are just like,
Which ones stand out to you?
which ones? There's so roots. There's just so many books. I think there was one about like being able to survive, I think, in the wilderness or something like that. And
Hatchet?
that book, sorry,
Hatchet?
maybe, yeah. And that one was banned because they said that's like a plot to escape prison, so you're like preparing yourself. There was
Do
another.
they have a rubric? How is that?
Yeah, so they have different categories. So one is like, if you're like, if it could possibly start a riot, you can't have that book. There's other books that if it's about sex or about or anatomy,
Yes.
even because of
Anything,
naked,
yes.
because technically a naked body, like the book that all the girls read, it was like about me or something like that. It was American Girl.
Oh, American Girl, all
Yeah.
about me.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
definitely banned.
The one that my 10-year-old daughter got.
Correct. I think that the prison system actually probably even gets heavier bans than the school systems.
They do,
Yeah.
because of black and brown authors are mainly banned. I mean, we all have different cultures, and everybody grew up differently. You can't expect one person to give you a story and expect somebody else to have that same story because we're not. We're all different people. So the way Black and brown authors, how should I say it? They voice
Their story.
their story is that's offended to them. But why should it? Why should it? Because we're the same people. We just share different stories. How I tell you my story.
It's your story.
Yeah.
And my
And
story
again-
is mine.
And again, it goes back to you can't tell me about me, unless you done walked in my shoes. You know, and that's not being harsh, that's reality.
Right.
That's reality. So if somebody wants to look at anatomy books, everybody want to learn about their body. Not everybody knows the type of organs you have. You might have been born with one liver or one kidney. You know, you don't know what's going on in other people's mind because they want to teach themselves and they want to learn their bodies. Why ban?
Amen to that. What's interesting is as you're speaking, Denise, and it's all the exact same conversations we're having about books in schools as books in prisons. Only I think probably in prisons, like you said, it is much worse. Probably because I think too there's this level of people don't believe in people in prison. Like they don't see them as humans. I think
They
there's this
don't.
attitude.
They don't.
They don't. I think a lot of people don't think you should have rights in prison.
They
Which
don't.
right, as if you're not real human beings.
Yeah.
They don't.
So I imagine it's, and I've heard the stories that it is exponentially worse. But as you're talking about why you need the books and why they're being banned, it's the exact same thing we're talking about in schools and public libraries. And as you were talking about the importance of like reading someone else's story, I think this is what got me the most as a parent. My husband and I have a very limited life perspective to teach our children with, right? We can only teach them what we have experienced ourselves. That's the only life that we can give them unless we look for perspectives of other people. So I always say, and this is an example I give, I can't teach my children what it's like to be a Black woman because I'm not a Black woman, right? And so if I want my children to have empathy, if I want my children to go out into the world and realize, oh, not everyone's life is like theirs, and people experience and navigate a world very differently than they do, how do I teach them that? Well, through books, through people's stories, right? Even I have a daughter who's 8 years old right now, and when she was in kindergarten, we were just talking about, with my older children, about what it means to be trans. And I have this kindergartner who's like, what's that, right? It was a little bit too much for her to understand what we were talking about with my older children. She was very confused. And so we went to the library and we got a book about a little trans girl and we read it together. And we went through the pages and we talked about the experiences of this little girl. And she looked up at me and she was like, well, I was born a girl and I feel like a girl. I said, well, then you are a girl. And then we talked about this character who was born a boy that felt like a, and it was this beautiful experience. And then she was like, oh, and then we just put the book down, right? But that opened up her world because it was someone else's perspective that I didn't have. And so these are the conversations
So
we're
she ran
having.
across someone like that.
Yes,
She
and now
wasn't
she has
so
the story.
rude or whatever.
Right, and she believes them, right? And she understands it. And so my husband and I, we talk about that, which is funny, the American Girl doll book. We gave it to my daughter one year, I think she turned 10, in her Easter basket, because it's about like girls, and there's one about puberty, and then there's one about whatever. And
How your body is going
yeah,
to
change, which are actually turns out not the easiest conversations to have with your children,
Probably
especially as they're getting older and they're starting. And so books are really great because you can read it together. I can read the book and then hand it to my child and say, here, you can read this book and let's talk. If you have any questions, we can discuss the book. It starts these conversations, right? But these are the kinds of books that are being banned in prisons and in schools. Same thing in schools. Oh, this book mentions someone's sexual assault, right? Oh, well, we can't have that then because it's pornography. Well, excuse me, what? Someone else's personal experience of sexual assault, you're calling it pornography?
Yeah.
Like that's actually, first off, that's gross, right? You're telling on yourself because you're telling me you read that and you were turned on by it, so you're gross. Number two, because that's what pornography is, right? It's written, intended to like sexually arouse, right?
Yeah.
And number two, this is someone's experience. And what if someone is a victim of sexual assault?
Right.
That book can help them feel heard, seen. It can help them, like you were talking about, like you could read the book about your mother. Your mother died. You could read a book about someone whose mother died and learn from their experience and how to cope. and books just, and we're seeing these books banned for all of these reasons, and because people are afraid of the ideas, and it's the same thing that you were saying in your research. In my school district where they're banning the books, they have this rubric. It doesn't matter if it's one sentence in a 400-page book. It's right, the whole thing. And to take these serious topics out of context and then to claim the whole book is bad, when not even that line in context is bad. It's real life, right? It happens to someone. Like I just can't. And again, Denise, you said something else that like really got to me because we had this conversation in my children's school district. We had all these people talking about these books that have all these bad words and these bad experiences and these kids are doing bad things and there's these F words in it. And someone spoke up and said, but these are some people's lives. Like, okay, it offends you, but we have students in our district who grow up in homes where they use these words, or they have experienced these things, or they have siblings who have done these things, right? We don't want that, we don't, but you're saying we have to ban the book so they can't read about their own lives, even because it offends you. Again, it's that being offended by someone else's life.
Right.
And these kids need to be able to navigate the world. And my goodness, I would so much rather them read about these experiences in a book than have to go experience them themselves in real life. They banned a book in our school district called Poet X. I don't know if any of you have read Poet X. I don't know, you probably sell it here.
Yes.
If you have not read it, go find the book and buy it today. It is the most magical book, and it's about this young high school girl. And it's just kind of her experience. And it's a little bit gritty at parts. It's not terrible. I mean, I'm a prude, and it's not offensive, okay? There's some gritty parts. She's having a hard time with her mom. She's having a hard time with her boyfriend. She's in high school. She's being ogled on the subway by grown men, just someone's real life experience as women growing up, right? And at one point in the book, her boyfriend are together, and her boyfriend wants to have sex, and she doesn't want to. And it's kind of this thing where, and then she's like, no, and she kind of pushes back, and they don't have sex. And it's this perfect story of consent. It is this perfect story to teach teenagers, to teach a young man, when your girlfriend says no, the answer is no. And to teach a young girl, you can say no, right? But, we have to take the book away because it talked about sex, right? Like, we can't let these kids, we can't acknowledge. But my goodness, how great, right? To teach young children, to teach teenagers. Clearly this book isn't for elementary schools, right? To teach teenagers who turns out, by the way, are having sex, some of them, and also are sexual. And I don't want to like get people and get myself in trouble here, but I'm raising teenagers. They are people with hormones. Like they're they feel sexual feelings. And to like pretend that doesn't exist is very dangerous. Like it's just gonna get us all into a whole lot of trouble. To just be like, oh no, they don't know. They're talking about it, they're reading about it, they're looking at it on their phones, they're experiencing it. And why not give them the tools, or at least not even give them, allow them the option to go in the library and take a book if they want it. And we keep talking about this within schools and libraries, and it's the same with the prison. These are places of voluntary inquiry, right? No one's forcing these books on children. Like, or if you want to learn about this, if this is a book you might need to read, if this is a topic true to your heart, then you can choose to read the book. I'm not forcing a book about consent on everyone. But my goodness, anyway, you just, Denise, everything you said just like lit all these like sparks in me. Because it's the same thing.
It is.
We're talking about the exact same thing.
Expound on what she said about the one pager. When I first went to prison, and the beginning of my sentence, because I've never been in trouble but that one time.
That is great.
Wow.
They used to clip the page that had it and still give you the book until they started getting this new technology, and then they just banned the whole book. They didn't have time to clip the pages that needed to come out, so they just banned the whole book.
And you are adults in there, right? You are adults who can make choices for themselves.
That goes with our saying they banned magazines, Penthouse, Playboy. You can't get none of that in there. None of that. And it's not what the magazine is. It's about you don't want other offenders having sex. Why they can't have self-fulfilled sex? Looking at a magazine. But all this rape that goes on in there, you know, I've never experienced or saw anybody, because me, I'm very on demand, and if I see it, I'm gonna say something. So I've never
Mess
saw
it
it.
around.
Yeah,
Around
I didn't play with them like that, and I didn't see it. If I would have seen it in front of me, I would have said something, because I just feel like, who are you? What are you in here for? You know, so that would have took me in a whole different place. But I'm just saying, I hear about it, and the things, that's unnecessary. Some of the magazines that they like, what's the rap magazine?
Source.
They banned Source. Source couldn't come in no more. They banned what's the other one? They get the little posters.
Oh. No, it's not people. It's
No.
It's like the ones that the like teenagers. Like.
Yeah.
Fold out posters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fold out posters.
No, this is a rap magazine.
I can see it in my head.
The Source.
It's called.
Yeah, and they have posters in there for kids to hang on their wall. Stuff like
I like
yeah,
that.
they banned all that. I just didn't understand it, because it was nothing in the magazines that could possibly get anybody in trouble. Yes, they talk
It's-
about rappers and they life, and, you know, they rap game or who got in trouble, but
It's like, what are they afraid of? What kind of growth are they afraid you're going to experience? Right? Like that's,
Well
I
said.
mean, anything that self-fulfilled us to make, just give us any kind of joy, because we're away from our home. You banned. It's like you can't get comfortable in here. I'm not trying to get comfortable. I'm just trying to make my time comfortable.
right?
Keep
right?
saying.
And survive.
Books and people.
Because your survival mode kicks in. It kicks in.
Wow.
Oh, go ahead, were you gonna say?
Yeah, well, something that really sticks out to me when thinking about like the bans of books is stuff that I've like experienced as a teacher, as well as just like doing like organizing work. It's mainly the purpose behind a lot of the bans. So with incarcerated folks, I think you mentioned it a little bit. Part of the logic behind it is it's a way of making people docile. Because in my experience, most of the time when I've tried to mail books into folks, the stuff that's been banned has been stuff that awakens people politically, like autobiography of Malcolm X, things that are really going to
Yes, they banned
help
that
people
one.
think
that's
about
right.
social consciousness. Like, so it's not necessarily they're banning stuff because, hey, you're going to grow from this. It's the exact opposite. It's because these things get people to think about our systems. And I think this is
Well, but that's true growth.
Yeah. And this is a similarity between the education system too. What I've noticed as a teacher, especially teaching, working in social studies, teaching social studies stuff, like I'm very attuned and very critical of like not just seeing the word book ban, but the type of ideas, the type of literature that goes into what that is. So I'll give an example in terms of the teaching side of it. Like Texas has made a really strong push over the last couple of years to ban this idea of critical race theory, which is insane. So it's absurd, being that like there's not a single high school curriculum that actually like says teach critical race theory or teach this. But what's the intent? So I always think about what's the intent, and intent has always been as a way of using like banning of books as a form of social control.
Yes.
And folks know this,
Absolutely.
incarcerated folks know this, folks on the outside know this. Like during slavery, reading and literature, those were things. How did slave masters keep control over slaves? They used literature and literacy as a form of social control. You can't read this, you can't control this. But happy to talk about this later. What are some strategy and tactics that folks have used to kind of counter some of that stuff? Like, and one of the things that like I found really interesting between 2020, between COVID and then probably to the present or so in terms of stuff that gets banned in terms of like what I sent to folks on the inside, like surveys, like even surveys about like prison conditions or like some basic life stuff. And we were talking about this earlier, like a lot of facilities didn't even want us to send in certain surveys about stuff. because they didn't want us questioning, okay, cool, are they monitoring this, or what's the food like, all these different things. And that, not that I think that is in common with all those things, literacy, literature, books, all those things are used by like the state and system as a form of social control.
That's true.
Well, and that's even when we're seeing schools across the state of Texas, and even in my personal experience, they're pulling books and making restrictions. They don't want people to have materials that bring their thinking outside of a very narrow box, right? There's this
Right.
box, like this is the way we do things, this is how life is, this is what gender looks like, this is what sexuality looks like, this is what marriage looks like, this is what race looks like. And so when you have books that break out of that very narrow box, like where we are, we're seeing it all across Texas. It's controlled because people are starting to look and think things differently. You know, we see as we got started in it, we started watching, especially some of the parents behind the movement. What we were seeing is a lot of these parents who were pushing the book banning movement were people whose children had gone through the public school system
Yep.
and turned out with different ideas than their parents.
Yeah.
They'd grown up gay or queer. They'd grown up to
Anything,
maybe become an atheist. They maybe, heaven forbid, grown up to become a Democrat, right? And so what we were seeing here, they grew up and they believed that white privilege existed, right? So we're seeing what was happening was parents whose children were growing up who had ideas and believed in things that their parents did not.
Interesting.
And their parents were losing control.
Mhm.
And so what it was, oh my goodness, I taught them right. You know, I took them to church every Sunday. I did this and I did this and I did this. Where did they get these ideas? They is that urge as a parent to blame someone. And I think that it kind of started, part of it is books in school, right? And it's control.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I think it's kind of true, right? Some of these kids are going out to school. They're talking to friends, they're reading books with ideas they've not experienced at home. And that's terrifying to some people, right? They want to control their children. They want to control what their children learn and read and see for fear their children might have these ideas later, right? We're seeing a lot of it like religious based, right? So a lot of these parents think that kids aren't going to hell now, right? Like, oh, my child's going to hell because they're queer, right? Or they don't believe in God anymore, or and it's control. It's absolutely control based, and I'm sure it's the same in prisons, right? We don't want people to see what it looks like to, push back against a system that is pushing them down. Yeah, I mean, it is.
Oh, I caught flack for it. Oh, trust me.
As you said,
I can
I
only imagine.
caught flack for it, but I didn't. I sit there and wrote every last grievance they had on the side, every last grievance. The sergeant was so mad at me because it was like, won't you stop writing that? No, that's my right. That's my right in order to help somebody else.
We should chat because I've been filing grievances against my kid's school district. So you and I can maybe share some things. It's probably a very similar process,
It
right?
probably is.
Let's go.
Like, let me expound on this. Like, in school, so, you know how, I don't know how old you are, whatever, but,
43.
okay, so, I'm 50, so, in school, we had the history.
Okay.
So, now, history is not taught in schools. Why? It's part of our past. So if you want me to learn about politics and you want me to learn about religion, why did you take history out of school?
Well, they're telling some parts of history,
So that's
and not all.
So that's
Yeah,
what I
but
was
they're
gonna
not
say.
telling the in-depth.
Yeah.
part.
No,
Y'all
they're
not
not.
giving the whole,
No.
I mean, but how can you tell the new generation history
Mhm.
when you're not giving?
They
So-
don't want to.
So that's what I was gonna say in terms of like the school system too. Like when I think about book bans, I think about another piece of it too. What's being banned and then what's not being banned. And I'll cite a very specific example of this. In the state of Texas, according to the social studies TEKS, which is Texas Educational Standards, one of the core Texas educational standards in the field of social studies, which includes like the 9th grade world history and the 10th and 11th grade U.S. history, one of the first TEKS on there says that you have to teach about the connection between the 10 Commandments and the United States Constitution. That is required as a part of like what all teachers who teach social studies are supposed to do. The reason I bring that up is because those teaks, and this is a whole different battle that I've worked with Ethnic Studies Network. Like, how do we change some of those things so the teaks, so they're more inclusive of Black and brown folks and people like LGBTQ folks, like all those different things, queer, indigenous folks. How do we create like a standard, an educational standard that's more inclusive of that? But that's a side story. Happy to talk about that later. If y'all want to know more about that, come at me.
Yeah, we're
I'm
gonna
happy to
discuss
talk
more
about that. Like, because that's also, I'm very passionate about that end of it too. But how that relates to this piece is that piece about what Texas requires by law to teach on like the connection between the Ten Commandments and its relation to the U.S. Constitution. And for all those out there who know anything about social studies, there's literally no real connection between the Ten Commandments and the United States Constitution. That doesn't exist. But the reason why I bring that up is because, like, the things that aren't banned often, like, maybe some people may find more controversial, especially stuff like that, where you have very specific ways you're supposed to teach. And there's a few years ago, it's not now, but there's a few years ago, there's this battle about teaching about slavery in Texas curriculum. I think I was in college when this was a big issue, so I wasn't on
We
the
try to
ground.
change the name of it.
Yeah. Yeah, so they had several different names on how the major book buyers they're gonna have were gonna describe slavery. Like, and I put all that out there as the context to, like, whenever these book bans are happening, they want to extract from us like a certain way of thinking. I don't want you to think about this. But at the same time as they're taking away something,
They're
they're also putting
teeny
something
tiny
in.
narrow view.
What they're putting in is the stuff that they think is going to, like, it's the way they want to indoctrinate. It goes back to that social control piece. And that's like another end of like what this looks like. And it happens in education, it happens in libraries, it's happening in school system, it's happening everywhere.
And they mask it as we're trying to protect the children.
Yeah.
But it's not actually
Protecting anyone?
Yeah, it's not even about parents controlling their children. It's the people who have historically held power are trying to keep their
Retain
grips
it.
on that power. Yeah.
I don't know if any of
And-
you have been following the state Board of Education. They just presented and are looking at curriculum for children. I don't know if you follow this. That's Bible
Very
integrated
familiar with
curriculum
this.
starting in kindergarten. They're
Yep.
going to intermix like the atonement and the resurrection, and they're literally it's going to be taught toward.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking like this is literally going into our public schools. Like I just submitted public comment last month about my deep concerns with this curriculum.
That's
It's
not just Fort Worth ISD, that's across
no, that's
the board.
statewide
That's across the board with
Yeah.
public education.
for the whole state of
and
Texas.
In all of Texas, what
Yes.
she's talking about.
It
In
is.
some counties, it's already approved. It's already enacted in some.
And I don't know if the State Board of Education finished their vote on it and they've actually approved it, like, to choose from the curriculum, but but you're right, like, you have to look at what they're pushing out, but then also what they're trying to push in. And that is a form of censorship as well, right? So that as Texas Freedom to Read, we talk a lot about that. The kinds of books that they choose is also can be a form of censorship if they're only choosing one sort, right? So book banning isn't just pulling a book off of a shelf,
Yep.
it's refusing to buy it
Yep.
because of the ideas that are in it. And I don't know, here at our organization, Texas Freedom to Read, last week, so we share a lot, we see all sorts of book banning across the state, right? And we are often disappointed, we are often dismayed, we are very rarely shocked. Last week, there was a public library system in Montgomery County, which is right outside of Houston. In March, their county commissioner, they created a new policy that removed librarians from their book challenge review process, but only for children, young adult, and parenting books. So now for all children's, young adult, and parenting books in Montgomery County that are challenged, the review committee that oversees the challenge, that is not allowed to have librarians on it. It's only appointed citizens who are appointed by the county commission.
Wow.
They created a commission, a book was challenged in the middle of September. And this committee announced their decision yesterday. And the book is called Colonization and the I don't want to say it wrong, Wampanoag Story. It's about, it's pretty much the story of Thanksgiving and the founding of America from the indigenous people's perspective. Somebody challenged the book And this committee of just some people, random people, not librarians, not experts,
It's always random.
voted, well, random, they were handpicked, but yeah,
Right.
random and
It's
random.
always random.
Yeah.
And you don't know who they are.
Right. They voted, this was their recommendation on the book that was challenged. The vote was, and the vote is final and binding, and it cannot be appealed. So this decision was made in all public libraries in Montgomery County last week. This book was officially reclassified as fiction. Like literally, they took it from the nonfiction section, changed the numbers, peeled off the sticker. It said it was a nonfiction book, nonfiction meaning historical and true, right? Fiction meaning made up. And they officially reclassified it. It is no longer in the public library system in Montgomery allowed to be considered nonfiction because these people decided it wasn't true. And that's
That is
that,
crazy.
that's where we are now,
That's crazy.
right?
Can you do that?
Well, so that's the
Wait,
question we're asking ourselves. But that's the issue with book banning is every time things like this happen, we ask ourselves, can you do that?
Peter,
Well,
I
they're
know
going
you
to
all
make
know.
it
Publish every.
We are trying to fight it because we say no,
A
you
group
can't.
of people can say, "Oh, this is like that's." Oh, this is nonfiction,
Right.
even though it's a fiction.
Right.
You can't do that. This is a
Yeah.
fiction.
I mean, the Library of Congress decided it was nonfiction. In every single major public library system in the state of Texas, this book exists. It is classified as nonfiction, but not in Montgomery County anymore. The indigenous perspective of America's founding is officially fiction.
If I lived in Montgomery County, I would engage in some vigilante liberalism. And it would accidentally get misshelved repeatedly.
And in a way, this is like
I love doing that, and I love getting buying banned books and sticking them in little free libraries. Yeah.
But like
I
this
like
is what
that.
you're talking about. It's not just about like because they didn't ban this book.
That's total control. Right
It's
there.
total. They're well,
That's-
and what's terrifying is now this county government gets to decide what's
Real
true or
or
not.
not.
right
That is, it is a disagreement.
arbitrarily, and it's an arbitrary process. Like we recognize that someone does need to classify these books. That there is an academic system in place through library science, right? There is
Usually, by the time it's published, it's classified.
Yes. But what's terrifying now is that's where we are, right? So, if we can't find a really good excuse to ban it, because maybe that was harder to ban because there was no sex in it, right? Well, what are our other options here? Well, let's say that we don't think it's true, and we're gonna, right? Like
That's
it's
unbelievable.
it is, but that just happened last week. So that's where we are.
So
And
it's
that's where the
getting
control is.
outrageous. I mean, that is scary. Actually.
It's terrible. No, it's terrifying. There's not, I mean, I cannot be clear enough as
How
how
someone
threatening
can
that
say
is.
your history is fiction.
Well, like,
That is crazy.
It's 1984.
Yeah, that's
It's
literally what I
yeah.
was gonna say, like, I was legit gonna say the exact same thing.
well, and then who's to say, at what point does our government get to say if someone's a victim of a crime, which we already know actually happened, so it might be kidding, and they come in and say, this happened to me, and the government's like, no, it didn't. You made that up. I mean, it does happen, right? Or a court, and you swear under oath, but then what, a panel of 4 community members, is, well, I guess that's what a jury is in some ways, right? Like, but like what,
But it's not a jury of our peers.
no, it's handpicked, well, and it's
It's a jury of
It's also the
someone's
juries we
peers.
also used to see a lot light
Yeah,
of, where they
yeah,
were handpicked,
unfortunately, we still have that
We still have that
problem,
problem.
yeah.
But and at what point, I mean, now this government gets to reclassify every book that pushes back against their narrow worldview, which is what book banning is about. It's about pushing, it's about putting everything in this teeny tiny narrow worldview, and it's often the worldview of those who currently have the power. And it should terrify not the people who are in power need to recognize that the power balance shifts. Like you've set up this system that is going to screw you next, right? Which is why this is so terrifying. Which is why, as like at Texas Freedom to Read, we're not pushing to ban the Bible out of schools, right? Do we, whatever. We're not pushing to ban books we don't like out of schools because that's not. We actually believe in the freedom to read. We, every even book on your shelf here. Would I agree with every idea in every book? Probably not. But I'm not in here saying, get that book out of here. It challenges my worldview.
Right.
That's not what libraries are about.
Let me expound on that. Because they have literally took the Pledge of Allegiance out of schools. Why?
Well, they're doing it up where my kids are every day.
I mean, literally, if you go to these schools around here, the Pledge of Allegiance is not in school anymore. When we was in school, I mean, literally, we had the Pledge of Allegiance. But everybody's trying to base it around religion. Why? Kids don't be thinking about that. All they know is I got to go to the homeroom and we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance and that's it. Adults are bringing it.
Well, kids
Because
should
they
that
have a thing.
choice.
Yeah,
That's what's
but they
great about it. is
They
that-
should, but my thing is this: why take it out of school? It's been there for years, decades. You took it out, and a kid would have never thought to, oh, I'm going to class and say Pledge Allegiance. Oh, I'm not doing that because it's my religion. Someone is placing it in their heads. So, I mean,
Well,
literally,
that can go in all sorts of directions.
Yeah.
That's, I mean,
it could, but why take the Pledge Allegiance out?
Well, they're
I mean,
still
I'm
doing
going-
it. They're
well,
still doing it.
It's a lot.
Governor
It's a lot.
Abbott-
it
Abbott
depends on
several
the
years ago
school.
passed state
I
law,
think
like
they
this
have
is
to
a,
do it.
yeah, this is a thing that like, so
I
I
think
would
it's
say for
kinda
the
bringing it
record,
back.
I legit don't make kids do it, like it's not, I just don't.
Yeah,
If I ever get,
it's
if I suffer
Choice.
consequences for
Let's
it,
take
then
it
I'll
out.
take consequences for it. But Governor Abbott several years ago passed state law, 2019 actually, stating that all schools and students have to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. That's like.
Yeah, that's like, that goes into
Unless they have a note signed
that
saying
football
that they
stuff
don't
and
do
when
it.
everybody wants to kneel and all that.
Yeah.
It looks like
Can
it's a Texas state law. Students
Yeah.
must recite the pledge of the U.S. well, and Texas flag. Which is
Yeah.
me, once a
Yeah.
year.
and those who don't usually have some issue with the government. They're making a stand. There's something that
Right.
the government is allowing to happen. So if someone take a knee or someone is not doing the Pledge of Allegiance, believe me,
It's
there's
free
something
speech.
going on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, and,
I can't pledge allegiance to you right now because you're doing this.
and
Okay?
the Supreme Court
So-
found that they can't force us. They can't, right? That is actually
Right.
a
Yeah,
so
they
free
can't
speech
force
issue.
Yeah.
But
I
I'm
wanna
gonna,
go back to
I wanna call
Kaepernick
Peter and explicitly, but then we had a couple of conversations about like,
Yeah.
what's legal, what's not, what's going on in like the courts right now around
Yeah.
book bans, around the First Amendment, like what, bring us into the conversation on like, yeah, what's
Yeah.
the law here?
Everything's going on.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem. It's like I'm constantly not surprised anymore, not shocked anymore, right? But I am kind of amazed to be reminded how creative people are getting who really want to ban books at the different ways that they'll attack
Yes.
the question of banning books and how the issue of a book ban can manifest in so many different ways. And it's the obvious ones, right? It's jails and prisons that are banning books as a form of control. We sued the Grayson County Sheriff's Office earlier this summer for having a blanket policy of banning books entirely from being mailed to people who are being held in the Grayson County Jail in Sherman, Texas. But one of the books that they banned, one of our clients' books, trying to deliver it to people in the jail, is called Protecting Your Health and Safety.
Yep.
That's all it's called.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And even that is being banned,
Yep.
even though you would think a book as educational and important for someone to have in a place like a jail.
Right.
They've decided is not something that they're going to allow. And if you dig deeper into that book, what you realize is that a lot of the information that's provided in that book is about giving people the information for themselves to use the legal system to do things like sue jails for horrible conditions and for treating people terribly, and for use of excessive force and for violating their civil rights broadly. And so it does come back to that issue of control for sure. And that's just one very clear example in one jail in one of Texas's 254 counties, and it's obviously happening everywhere. And then there's the Reader Act, there's HB 900, which is the, I guess, sort of colloquially referred to as the book ratings case, where there was the Texas legislature required booksellers who sell to school districts to rate all their books for
Not going to happen.
Right.
Sexual
Right.
relevance and sexually explicitness.
Yeah, and to monitor that, like, I'm supposed to ask you, you're a librarian? Is that where you work at a school?
No,
Okay.
I'm just a mom.
You know, you can buy this book. I'm not doing that.
No,
Yeah,
no.
And you gotta go back and find out the books that.
Yeah, any
sent
books you already
Right.
sold them.
Right.
Right. No,
Right.
but, yeah, we
Yeah.
got. I'm so proud of ABA they gonna keep fighting.
Yeah.
They are, and
That's
they're,
ridiculous. Who has time for that? No.
No one does. And well, the incredible thing about it too is that even though the state was requiring the booksellers to rate the books, they were then saying that once you've rated them,
if we don't like
it's
your
actually-
rating,
well, if we don't like your rating,
We're
then
gonna
we
send it back.
require you to change it, and we're going to send it back. And if you don't rate it in the ways that we like you to rate it, then you're essentially going to be banned from selling books to schools until you get your ratings to conform
That
to the
is not.
state's feedback that it gives you on your ratings.
That is so ridiculous.
And then at the end of the day, the ratings, the way the state law was written made it so that it would appear that it actually wasn't the state's ratings, that it was the booksellers' ratings. And so
And even though they would
from-
question the bookseller's rating. It's just-
right, yeah.
yes, yeah,
And-
well, that was the point.
and from a First Amendment perspective, I mean, we consider that compelled speech, right? Because the government is requiring someone to speak about any topic is something that encroaches on their First Amendment rights. And
Which
fortunately,
was the same as the Pledge of Allegiance.
the same as the
was
French
compelled
is
speech.
compelled speech, right?
You can't force someone to speak something.
Then there's the Llano
Llano
County
County
case.
case. Well, the good thing about HB 900, tell them, is that portion where they're forcing booksellers to
Struck down.
rate it is currently enjoined, which
Correct.
means it is not, like the Fifth Circuit decided, hey, this actually might be compelled speech.
Mhm.
And this might be
And
unconstitutional.
bookseller's not gonna do it.
So
Yeah,
we're gonna find out.
Yeah, yeah.
It still has to go back to the lower court and they're gonna redecide anyway, yeah. So then there's the Llano
Well,
case.
then there's the Llano case, and I mean, what's so interesting about these cases where you're talking about the decision of librarians or public officials who oversee libraries to remove books from shelves is the state of the law on the ability of public libraries to do that is kind of unclear. And that creates so much uncertainty that it also emboldens people who want to remove particular content from their shelves to do it.
Or reclassify them.
Or reclassify it, yeah,
Because
or to change it from nonfiction to fiction. And it's incredible, but it's also so unsettled that now you have cases that are probably going to go up to the Supreme Court really soon. There's one in the Fifth Circuit right now, this Llano County case, where the court seemed really skeptical of imposing a rule that would prevent libraries from doing that, especially because they were so concerned about children being exposed to content that could have sexual or graphic depictions or have one line in a book that they deem as inappropriate and feel like they're worried about stripping the power of librarians to remove those books in case they might be exposed to children of a certain
Well,
age.
And
And-
if you know the list of books that were at case in Llano,
Mhm.
so there were 17 titles. One of them was a book called Freddie the Farting Snowman.
Yeah.
There was one about Larry the Laughing Leprechaun, when he was doing something. There was one about the KKK and how it formed, right? So these books aren't, we're not talking 50 Shades of Grey, right? These are books that, it's a terrifying precedent, right? And what happened in the Llano case was this woman named Bonnie Wallace, she actually travels the state of Texas and tries to get books banned. She has a list of 600 plus books. She tries to get banned all over the state. She's from Llano. She went into the Llano Public Library and said, and gave a list of books to the library board and librarian and said, I want these books removed from shelves because I believe they're inappropriate. And the librarian said, I'm not gonna do it. So here we have a vigilante librarian. You're gonna love her. I know her and I should connect you to her. And the library board came back and said, you have to take it off. And she was like, I'm not taking this book off the shelves. Anyway, they decided to restructure the library system and create, same thing they did in Montgomery County, a citizens committee that gets to now make the decisions. So they went and they took the books off. And now we have some little citizens who are suing Llano County for violating their First Amendment rights and taking the books away. And that's the issue at hand. But that librarian eventually lost her job. And she's now suing the county. So but yeah, she was a vigilante librarian, which we.
Yeah, we're vigilante booksellers.
Yeah, right? At Texas Freedom to Read, we really support librarians and we know that their jobs are on the line, right? So we're never gonna go ask librarians but it's a message we always send out so you can tell your people as well. At Texas Freedom to Read, we will always protect the identities of librarians who are seeing concerning censorship happening in the libraries, and they can give us whatever information they have, and we will find a way to find out that information through another route, whether that's a public information request or conversations with people. If we know what we're looking for, then we don't get librarians in trouble. Because many of them do, need to pay their bills, it turns out, right? And that's their job. But yeah, I mean, it's a wild
Yeah,
ride.
and it's
right?
stressful.
I
for a
want to
lot of
piggyback
libraries.
off of what you were saying about HB 900 because, you know, with the American Booksellers Association, we were fighting that right along with our neighbor Arkansas. I don't know if you heard about Arkansas. They were creating laws for criminal charges against booksellers and librarians.
Really?
Meaning if somebody came into your store, like 1690 Project, did not like the book, and you were told to take it off, and you didn't take it off, you could be subject to a felony.
Wow.
Are you serious? So that's why it's so important.
It's been crazy.
Right now, the judge, it is being blocked, but that doesn't mean that it's going to sooner or later be a reality. But I think you said it like earlier, it's about controlling society. And so you have to be vigilant when it comes to literacy and work.
Well, and the new legislative session is starting in January for Texas, and we've had our ears to the ground as to what legislation is coming in terms of book banning. And there are a few things. Luckily, we're not hearing as much chatter about penalizing librarians and booksellers. I'm not saying it's not gonna happen, so that, whatever, so don't like get too excited. But one of the things we're really afraid of is a new law that creates these citizen committees for libraries across the state. That now pretty much librarians aren't trusted anymore, and they're going to give the power to decide what's in libraries to a handful of people that are appointed by the local government. So, and that is terrifying, because
Can you
that's,
imagine what they want to say?
Yeah.
I have a problem with jumping over librarians and going.
yeah,
I think that's a huge unnecessary leap, you know?
yeah, well, they're trained.
Yeah.
Well, and not only are they trained, but
Yeah, I
there's
was
an
gonna say,
actual
Please.
They have
process.
a love for literature. I mean, you can have someone else.
But there is there's a process
I
in
paid all
place.
of this money for this degree, and now you're telling me that I should have just, not, yeah.
Maybe people don't realize that the librarians are not arbitrarily deciding, like making these decisions. They don't get a box of books in the mail and say, this is fiction, and maybe I think this is nonfiction. Like, that's not how it works. And when you buy books, it's also like, oh, I don't like those, so I'm not gonna let anybody read them. Like, that would be, against your code of ethics, right? You guys are trained, there's like procedures and processes.
And that's why they're trying to take it away from us, is because they know that we're not going to just cave into the whims of,
One
some
group of
disgruntled person.
That's just
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah, I feel like the idea was to not even go up the structure of the library versus just over.
Yeah, they're like, the
You know,
librarians
not
are
up.
too ethical, and so we're gonna be underhanded and just
Yeah,
circumvent
it needs to be upstream or downstream, not over.
That is-
That doesn't make sense.
I mean, maybe to close, we should bring it back to where I think we've been going, which is like, what are the actions? This is the day of action, right? Like, what are the actions you all are seeing that are successful? What do you need folks to know about how to take action? And where do we go from here if we see more of these coming in the next legislative session and local communities, all of that?
Well, I'm gonna share some books that are being banned. And,
Yeah.
Of course, it's just a few. There's so many, right?
What are the lists that you're looking at? Because there's so many lists. What is the master? ALA has a master list. Who has a master list?
Penn America has a really great list. I would say Penn America has probably the best list right now.
What about for the prison system? Who has the master list?
What is the two lists?
Somebody, she's about to release the list,
Yeah.
right?
Because they,
So Penn America also published
Yeah.
a report where they linked to some of the lists, but I can send you the link of
Okay.
TDCJ's current list.
Was your work that was just highlighted on NPR recently? There was a story about prisons and book bans on NPR in the last month or two.
It wasn't us, we haven't released our
We haven't
report
released
yet.
it.
Yours is coming.
It's coming out.
Does it have an actual catalog of books as well?
Not within the report
It will
itself,
link to.
but it will link to it.
Okay, that's exciting.
So there's a banned book list and then an approved book list,
yes.
which makes
Okay.
no sense. And then there's also a book that I've started reading recently. It's called Texas Letters, and it's a bunch of letters
Written
from
Inmates.
written from people who are incarcerated or currently incarcerated, and they banned that one because
Yes, they
it's-
did because they did not want to hear the truth.
right, that, and they said it could incite
The truth is
prison-
powerful.
prison riot.
Yeah, the truth is their truth from the inside to the outside. you don't hear those stories not unless they write.
Yep.
You know,
Well, those with control never want to give information to those under their control of how to push back against control. So,
oh, yes.
right, like that's,
And it can so easily be classified as all that can be designed to start a riot, right? Which is one whole category of banned books. And
Or what
still
was
trying
the
to figure
soft
out.
cover books we were looking into? That was pretty ridiculous. I think either soft or hardcover. I can't remember which one. But one was saying that either one is not allowed. I can't
it's a
remember. which one.
hardcover, they think they're too dangerous.
It's probably hard.
Yeah,
I
That's
guess
a
it's
hardcover,
Yeah.
because we have to ship books to inmates, they do not want hardcover.
Yeah, so it's
So you
like
think you're gonna dig a hole with it, what?
well, it could be
I used to hardcover.
it could be an
Be somebody
obstacle.
over there.
Yeah, it could be a weapon. It could be an obstacle. It could be. It could start a prison riot. It could
Well,
start a
this
fire.
just
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
just happened,
Yeah.
so,
Well,
cause, to expound on the hardback. It wasn't always we couldn't have hardbacks. It just so happened here, since they trying to do away with all the paper, go paperless. Well, when they did their searches, it's called an annual search, they found a lot of K2 in the bindings of books. So,
Oh, you could probably sneak stuff into hardcover books.
Yeah.
Yes,
yes,
that was a
Oh,
so that's why they're abandoning hardcover.
Even paperback now, because the paperback is laced with fentanyl.
Oh, yeah, I read
Yeah,
about
because
that.
it's liquid, they let the pages dry
Right.
or whatever. So now they
That's
want,
too much.
Yeah.
they
You know,
want
right? People
everything
get creative.
on
So you get-
tablet.
yeah,
And when they
you-
banned greeting cards too. for them.
Oh, yes,
Oh.
they,
Flyers,
we
all of
can't,
the-
So no
Is
paper.
there anything within paper?
Yes,
What?
that's important context about current TDCJ policies
Right.
about letter banning. A good bit of that, so like if I write an incarcerated person
A
now,
letter.
I will send them a letter, but it's gonna go to a central office
That's right.
that's
it's
in
third
Dallas.
parties, yeah.
And then they're gonna get that letter that I sent to them, it's gonna be scanned, they're gonna get it on their tablets, like.
Mhm.
And the
Yep.
reason I point that out, that's another dimension to like what these bands look like, because it's not just the physical band of like a hard copy and stuff. Like where it may seem to some people as, oh cool, freedom, I've got a tablet now. And TDCJ poses it as like, hey, we're upgrading our facilities and we're upgrading our systems by giving people tablets now. We're in the modern age. That's also been used as a form of repression now too. Because also when you have the tablets, instead of physically seeing the physical copy of the letter, all those letters are going to be monitored. They're going to be strictly monitored. You're going to be the TDCJ is able to see what's exactly written and all those things.
Right.
So that's
Yes.
another clever
Oh my
way of
God.
Yes.
that's another clever way.
Big
of
brother, watch him every word.
And I don't know
Yes.
if this is true of TDCJ,
Yeah,
but I
go
know
ahead.
some of the
Ask away. I
jails
can
that
speak to what I know.
do they is it like some of the jails where after 30 days you don't get to read your letter anymore, it's just gone?
No.
I
I
don't
don't know
about
that.
Yeah.
That
Some
That's
jails are
mean.
doing that.
That's
That would be
awful.
something to look into. I don't know that off the top of my head,
That's
but
like
if I had to guess, there probably is a time limit on when they can access that letter on like their iPad.
That's awful.
On their,
Because that is what some of the local jails are doing. Is
Yes,
they're putting
I
a
do
time
that.
limit on it, and they're saying you get access to this letter that your family member sent you, your friend sent you, your loved one sent you. You could read it for 30 days, and after that, it's just gone. You don't get to see it
Because of
But-
data storage, and
Yeah.
it costs data storage pretty
Oh,
cost.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
probably,
Still.
I'm
Yeah,
sure there
but-
is some limit on it because of what you're saying.
Do
Yeah.
That's
do they ever get access to the original letter when they like get out or anything?
Oh, I don't know.
No.
Probably not.
as far as I know, no.
They probably
No.
Yeah.
trash.
I think they throw it away as soon as they've scanned it.
That's like
Why would they
heartbreaking.
not
It is
They're worried about
because
the
That's real
paper.
people.
Like,
Why
that's
would they
like
not
the love,
scan it
like
and
the-
print it?
Yeah.
I'm like, if your mother had written
Because
it and that
they-
letter doesn't exist anymore, and you're
They do.
They're paying more money
I
for
think
the
some
data
people
storage.
do that too. Yeah.
That's what they should do.
But it's
No one
it's-
no one said the system is efficient.
Oh,
Yeah.
no one said that it's just-
but they're in the modern world, so
so that point.
But
Yeah.
you know, when
They're paying all that money for
there's a
iPads.
flip side to this. The flip side is that, you know, and we've had a lot of these experiences where somebody would send books
Yes.
and they have to come from a bookstore.
Yes,
Yeah.
they
And
do.
then so,
oh,
and it has been a situation where they have taken on the identity of a bookstore instead of going into the bookstore. So who protects the bookseller that's supposed to say, if somebody takes your identity and your
Oh,
card
yeah, we done
and
that.
send books to the prison, but it didn't come from our store, you know.
And it get
and so-
returned back to us, like, we didn't ship this book out.
really?
So
So they were
it's-
pretending to be
it's-
you?
Oh, yeah.
It's
All the
controlled,
time.
but if
They use our address,
human
but we can
fails
ship
to
the book.
control the free will of man,
Yeah.
if that breaks down and fails, that's when you get all these rules and orders into place. So there is it's harsh, and it's unfortunate that everybody's impacted by what you do, but that's what's happening here. And so, it's a constant going back and forth, and we have to see as a society, where is the balance? And
That's
the
the
other-
bureaucracy too, that's just a mess.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. So again, I think, you have to start at some level of discipline so you can find rules and order in society.
Okay, well, we're almost done with our conversation. I do want to give us some time to kind of meet and greet. We're at 2:45 now. I just want to just cover some of these books. Now, y'all, I had a fit. Now, when they messed with Jabari,
I read it before you.
when they banned Jabari, I'm like, are you kidding me?
I don't understand how they did it. And somebody shed light.
Let's look.
I mean, okay, 1619, okay, that
Yeah.
okay. Cast, good book. I know that could really offend some people, right?
That's
I haven't read
But-
that. What is that one about?
Cast.
Yes.
It talks about really the oppression of melanated people. And interestingly, she even goes overseas. It's not just America, it's the cast.
Oh,
And she talked about even how Germany learned about the cast through America.
Yeah.
So
That makes sense.
yeah. So and then we get this book. Why this would get people in their feelings. But cute children books, I just like. Why are you banning Soulway? I mean, it's just a cute and it's beautiful pictures. It's about a dark skinned girl appreciating her beauty, and it's banned.
There's no reason for it to be.
So
So we had a book in our school district that was challenged, didn't get banned thankfully, but it's called My Fave is Fresh. And it's about a little girl who goes to get her haircut at a black barber shop, little black girl. And they tried to ban the book, and that there were two complaints. And one of them was, get this was the complaint written down, we have it. Another book about black hair. That was the complaint. And the second complaint was, little girl gets a haircut that makes her look like a little boy. And so the argument here was double, right? First off, it's pushing this gender ideology, I guess, because like a little girl got a short haircut, whatever. And then number two, it was about black joy ultimately. I mean, right? That it made someone mad. That another book about black hair. I mean, that was the complaint.
don't read it.
And so, but it was so clear that it was just simply anti-blackness that was the reason for wanting the book out. It was just clear as day. It was almost felt better for them to put it that clearly, to be like, oh, you're just a racist, right? Like it was that easy to say, this is wrong. Because so often they're like, oh, I'm not racist. This book just, But that was like, oh no, you just hate black joy.
They just wrote.
Right, they just wrote it, black hair, right? But so that's the kind of reasons we're seeing. So there may not be a good reason for Jabari Jumps other than a little black boy learns a brave lesson about life. That literally could be it, inspiring bravery amongst little black boys. Like that very well could have been their complaint.
I
Which is
want to add on to
gross.
Jabari Jump real quick. I was here one time, and it was a Caucasian lady. She came in and she had her daughter pick out a book. She picked out Jabari Jump, and she said, "I want this book because he swims like I do." She
didn't even,
She's
just like
not even
the
looking at she ain't looking at color. It's the fact that he's about to jump off the diving board.
It was such a precious moment that me and the mom looked like all she see is a little boy that
swimming.
swims like her, and she wanted that book, and she was hugging that book because he swims like her, and we were like,
Innocence of kids. It's just
they have to be taught.
and Henry Box when it got banned, that hurt my feelings too. I mean, people need to know his story. I mean, what he had to go through to get freedom. You know what I'm saying? This is real.
Back to your
This is
point
real
about
history.
the Bible. That's back to your point what you just said about it.
So I mean, this book banning business is just out of control. It's just,
It is. It really is.
Go ahead.
So
I'm
I
sorry.
think one of the things that we were also talking about too is, okay, what can we do about this? So I want to provide a little bit on like some of the things just in the arenas that I'm in that like people can do. So I always say 3 words that you can do anytime repression happens, anytime book bans, any of that stuff. Organize, organize, organize. Right? But in Texas, Texas State Leg is coming up in January. I'm not heavily personally involved in the legislative scene. It's not my thing. Don't have time for it. I'm in connection with plenty of people who are, and some simple things that you can do in that regard. Writing public comment for certain things like this. Connecting with local orgs in Texas, not just in Fort Worth, that deal with this. There's a Texas Freedom Network. There's Black Star, which specifically deals with the education with African Americans in education, looking at teaching those educational standards in social studies and in other words. So just getting involved in some of those organizations. Then on the organizing side of it, like if you're looking to write to incarcerated folks, like definitely there are plenty of opportunities to do letter writing, pen pal letter writing to folks on the inside to give books. And one way that I've done this in Texas in terms of getting books to folks inside, one is through, there's a lot of books to prisons organizations. I'd have to do a little research to know which ones are specifically here just in DFW, but I know there's some in Austin, there's some in Denton, and then another way that I send folks in, I can, if I need to send books in to folks on the inside, I can always do it through like religious organizations and stuff like that too. Like church, there are a lot of different churches and even just like religious nonprofits, non-denominational and otherwise, that send books to folks on the inside. And like those they don't have the same level of rigor when it's coming from one of those organizations. So those are like a couple of things that I would suggest in terms of getting into the book.
And I want us to continue the conversation. So please make sure, Sarah, on her notebook that you write down your name,
Oh,
your
absolutely.
email, your phone number, and so we can continue the conversation and continue to just have this, get the word out. I think this was a good start for us because we have several conversations with book banning, but I think this is probably more. Believe it or not, this is actually formal for us. So, but I want us to continue this conversation, and I want to grow it, and so we're looking forward to November 19th to the report.
Yes.
And so, so Sarah, can you pass your notebook around so
I
people
will.
can write down their their information?
I want to add one thing to it, prevention, a lot, and this is probably on the prison side more so, and that's because we do a lot of books to prison.
Yeah.
I want to get to a point where we don't find joy of reading and literacy when you're in prison. Let's create those sensations before we get there.
That's
And
good.
that
That's
love of
what-
literature. I don't want you to discover great writers in prison. Like
No way.
Marcus Garvey can be discovered
Yeah.
before you get to prison, right?
Well, even as a mother, like I want my children to learn, I said that. I want my children to learn these lessons through these stories and books so they don't go to prison, right? Or so they make good choices. Because you learn from people's
And you-
experiences.
And you find, I found a lot of urban lit. I liked urban lit because sometimes it teaches the bad to tell the good, right? And so, and I think those voices need to be discovered, but how can we discover them on this side of the concrete? Because on that other side is now you're dealing with the rightful power to censor, enslave, and all the things that come with the prison system. So I think that's where it needs to, help us evolve that.
How people discover all these great authors and writers and social consciousness. Like, cause I have a lot of friends on the inside and folks who come outside too. They didn't start like what you were saying. They didn't start reading. They didn't take the time to discover like their history, the rich history of like Black, Indigenous folks, brown folks, LGBTQ folks. They didn't study those rich histories until they were incarcerated. So you're like, hey, how do we start that process before something like that even happens?
Right, and that's where your voice is so powerful and crucial
Absolutely.
in those circles of, this is what we need to do now,
Mhm.
because this is what's gonna happen to you then. And we don't have a lot of control because it is moving digital, because of some of the outside forces that's caused it to move that direction. So, you know.
Okay. All right, well, great conversation.
Yeah,
We're
thank you.
at our hour.
Great.
Okay. Well, thank you, and Diane, you can.
Thank you.
Bye.
You can add your contact.
Yeah, absolutely.
I already have my contact.
And- We're looking forward to their report on the 19th.
Yeah.
Whose
We can
report
do
is it?
it, or you can help
It's
us with it.
Lioness and